Hello everybody and welcome back to more political chatter. In this video we will be talking about the 2024 presidential election based on polls. Polls are always a major factor in elections. They most of the time, I will say, let us know how the country is feeling about an election, who is winning, but of course, as we know, polls do not predict elections always. Polls are not votes. Polls can be extremely inaccurate sometimes. If you remember back in 2022, during the midterm elections, polls were expecting Republicans to flip Pennsylvania's Senate seat red, flip Nevada's Senate seat red. One had Arizona flipping red, and Georgia. There were quite a few that had Georgia flipping red, and none of them did. And Democrats were extremely underestimated. Or if you look back at 2016, Hillary Clinton was expected to win states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, even North Carolina. And in all of those, which Donald Trump ended up winning, she was heavily overperforming, or overestimated, I should say, in polls. And Donald Trump pulled out a narrow win when polls were dead wrong. No polls were predicting a Donald Trump win. So looking at 2024, as I said, polls are not votes, but this video is about polls state by state and the Electoral College, how each state will vote if polls are accurate in each state. So, looking nationally, before we head into each state, Donald Trump leads by 2.7% when you include Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, two independents, and then the Green Party nominee Jill Stein. He leads by 2.7, while in this day in history, Biden led by 6.4. So you can see how much better Donald Trump is doing this time around than he was in 2020. He's running a much stronger campaign now. Joe Biden is much more unpopular now. And through, he just has a much greater chance of winning the presidency than he did in 2020 and 2016. So with that being said, let's go state by state and see how polls are predicting the 2024 election will go. And before someone goes to the comments and says this video is not a prediction by any means. I have separate prediction videos that you could go check out on my channel. They're prediction and analysis videos. They are not just simply based off polls. Polls can be a factor in many state calls, in many of my state predictions, but they by any means do not dictate how I think a state will vote. So before we head into actually characterizing any states, there are four characterizations of states. That being tilt, meaning a less than 1% margin, lean being a 1 to 5% margin, likely being a 5 to 15% margin, and safe being a margin of over 15%. So we will be going through these states alphabetically, starting with Alabama. We have three polls. As you can see, all three have him above that 15% threshold to make it a safe state. Alabama, according to polls, is a safe state. That is how I also have it as a safe state in my current prediction. In Alaska, we have a few more polls, all of which fall under the likely column. None are below 5% and none are over 15%, 12, 8, and 7. So Alaska, it's looking like, will be a likely state for Donald Trump. That is also where I have it in my current prediction. Looking at Arizona, a hotly contested swing state heading into the 2024 elections. And very disappointing, to say the least, for the Biden campaign. Donald Trump is crushing Joe Biden in the state of Arizona. I mean, these are critical 11 electoral votes, and I will remind you, Joe Biden won the state of Arizona in 2020. Trump leads by 4, 7, 6, 3, 6, 9, 4. So, most of these numbers let's see. So, yeah, actually, this would be a lean state when you don't count the Newsom and Harris polls. So, that's 7 and then 4. So, 2 are in lean, 1 likely, 2 likely, another lean, and then likely. So according to these polls, it would actually, on average, according to polls, Arizona would actually be a likely state in this scenario. Polls on average do say that Trump will win the 2024 election in Arizona by over 5 percentage points, and that should be a big worry sign for Joe Biden because now I'll mind you, polls in recent elections in 2020 and 2022 have favored Republicans in polls rather than the actual results. 2020 polls had Donald Trump winning the state, Joe Biden won, and 2022 polls, right at the very end, near Election Day, actually had the Republican Blake Masters beating the Democrat for Senate, Mark Kelly. So I don't think that it will be a likely margin, but this video is just based off of polls. Now moving on to the state of Arkansas, no surprise here, 3 polls conducted, all over a safe margin, as I have in my prediction. In California, we all of the polls conducted, or except one, have Biden over 15%, and so on average, obviously, Biden will win the state of California by a safe margin, no surprise there. Colorado, we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13. So we have a wider variation of poll results, but on average, it does look like Biden leads by more than 5% in most polls, making it a likely margin win. That is also where I have it in my current prediction. Connecticut, 4 polls conducted, and all of which do fall under the likely margin characterization, none under 5 and none above 15. Not much of a surprise. That's also where I have in my current prediction. So there have been no polls conducted in Delaware so far. This is from 2020. This is Biden's home state, so we can expect that one to be safe, as well as the District of Columbia. There have been no polls conducted, so that one, is always safe for Democrats. And then looking at Florida, this is a state that shifted heavily towards the Republicans in 2020 and very significantly in 2022 with the re-election of Governor Ron DeSantis. But looking at just the Trump versus Biden polls, we see Trump up +6, Trump +11, Trump +10, Trump +7, Trump +5, and Trump +11. So all of these states have Trump winning by a likely margin, and those numbers are significant. I mean, these numbers +11, +10 in a presidential election, it really is unheard of for the state of Florida in recent elections, and it is astonishing to see where Florida has gone in such a small number of years. I mean, it really has trended so much towards Republicans, and it is on track to really become a state that we never need to talk about, which, is incredible to say, considering that in 2000 it was decided by 500 votes, that Obama won it by a tilt margin. Trump won it by 1% in 2016. So it is just such a historically close state, but it really isn't anymore. Looking at Georgia, a state that was really expected to go Republican in 2020, and most polls were expecting that, or almost all polls were indicating that. However, it actually flipped to the Democrats in 2020. Biden won it by about 0.2%, a really astonishing win. And when you look at the numbers here in these polls, and this just demonstrates how bad it's looking for Joe Biden in 2024, Donald Trump leads every single Trump versus Biden poll. In the most recent ones, Trump +7, Trump +6, +4, +7.3. Astonishingly, on average, this is a likely margin. +7, +6, +7, +8, +8 are all likely margin wins for Donald Trump, which is incredible considering that this was a blue state 4 years ago. So again, so many indicators that Biden needs to step up his game, especially in the polling industry. In Hawaii, no polls conducted there. It is a very safe Democratic state, as always. In Idaho, no polls conducted there. We can expect Idaho to be safe Republican, as it always is. In Illinois, let's see. In Illinois, we have a few polls conducted. Biden leads by 10. Biden leads by 18, by 20, by 12, by 9. So these all do fall under the likely margin column, which is also where I have it, all besides plus 20. But the majority show it being likely. That is also where I think things stand. And just looking at this electoral map, it is not too far off. Every state besides Arizona and Georgia is where I have my current prediction, even margin-wise. This is exactly where I have it, which is really, unusual for polling to be, as close to my prediction as it is. Arizona and Georgia, I do think, is favoring Republicans just a bit. Now moving on to Indiana. Only 2 polls have been conducted between Trump and Biden. Trump leads by 21 and by 19. Of course, Indiana is a safe Republican state. And Iowa now, Trump leads by 15. This was a really poll that grabbed a lot of people's attention. Trump plus 15, because this Des Moines Register poll by Ann Selzer is known as the most accurate polling in the country. Even though they just run Iowa polls, they're typically famous for doing the Iowa caucus poll right before the caucus, but they always get it spot on. They did. They got it. They actually didn't do too well this year for the Iowa caucus, but close enough. But it showed Trump plus 15 in Iowa, and this just demonstrates Biden's weakness, his crumbling coalition, even among those few rural voters that he once had. So Trump does lead in that poll by 15, but all the others show Iowa going to him by a likely margin, which is also my prediction. In Kansas, he leads by 16, then 11, 11, 14. So that one's a likely on average. I actually had this safe, but I could very well see it going likely. I would not be surprised if it goes likely. Kansas has become, there are quite a few anti-Trump Republicans in the state of Kansas. In Kentucky, Trump leads by wide margins in all 3 of the polls. In Louisiana, Trump leads by 15. There has only been a single poll conducted between him and Biden, so that would make it a safe state. I'm surprised it's even that close, to be completely honest. In Maine, so they have 2 congressional districts where that's how they allocate their delegates. So this is for okay. Oh, here we go. So this is for Maine's 2nd district. Trump leads by 20, which is astonishing. Considering that he won Maine's 2nd by 8% in 2020. 8%. And then even though polls were actually showing Biden would win there by 2%, he actually won by 8. And now they're showing he's up by 20. That's incredible. Biden up by 8. And then overall, Trump leads Maine by 6 points, which is unheard of in recent history for the state of Maine. Biden is about to get crushed. The Democrats need to urgently put up someone else. But then again, you have this poll, Trump up 14 in the 2nd district, Biden up by 16 in the 1st district, and then Biden ahead by 1 at large. And then at large, Biden leads by 11 in this Emerson College poll. But that was in September of 2022. That one was so long ago. So on average, for the 2nd district, on average, 14 and 20, that would be a safe state or district, I guess you could say, for Trump, which that would be incredible. Maine's 1st district, 8 and then 16. So on average, that would be a likely state for Joe Biden. We were not expecting heading into the 2024 election with Maine's 2nd being safe for Republicans, but Maine's 1st being likely for Democrats. It's usually the opposite. And then at large, Trump leads by 6, and then Biden leads by 1. On average, that is a lean Trump state. Maine goes to Donald Trump. Wow. Moving on now to the state of Maryland. Wow, there have been more polls than I expect. All above the safe margin. Biden wins Maryland by a safe margin. Massachusetts, not much surprise there. Biden wins it by quite a lot. Michigan, a very critical swing state. And Trump leads every single poll. Quinnipiac University, which is a pollster that almost always favors the Democrats, has Trump leading in Michigan, and that is a caution. That should be a caution sign for the Biden campaign there, that he's losing Michigan in a Quinnipiac poll. But on average, let's see, so on average, I think, even though there is quite the outlier from Kaplan strategies that has him up by 10, considering especially the even result, this on average would put Michigan a lean state for Donald Trump. That's a flip from 2020. So far, there have been 3 flips: Arizona, Georgia, and Michigan. And Maine as well. And Maine. So 4 states have flipped already. In Minnesota, on average, wow. So we have 2, 3, 3, 4, and then 8 and 8. So this would be right on the verge of being lean or likely. But yeah, on average, it actually would be a lean state. For Biden, it was likely for him. He won it by 7 or 8 back in 2020. In Mississippi, Trump leads by 18 in the only poll conducted there. In Missouri, Trump leads by only once did he go under 15%, so that means that it will be a safe state. And then Montana, Trump leads by quite a lot in every single poll, only dipping down below 15% once, but that was in August of last year. So it looks like Montana is a safe state. That also follows my personal prediction or characterization. In Nebraska, a really shockingly close race. It should not be this close at all. But Donald Trump, regardless, we don't have any we only have statewide, I guess, at large polls, but Nebraska does award electoral votes by congressional district. So I will just assume that Nebraska at large obviously goes safe Republican, as well as the 1st and 3rd, not 2nd, congressional district. And I guess I would assume, considering that Biden won it by almost 7% in 2020, that Nebraska's 2nd would be a lean Democratic state. Of course, this is just my prediction. I just need to fill in the map. But there have actually, surprisingly, been no polls conducted from the state of Nebraska. No polls. Now moving on to the state of Nevada. Another important swing states, but only 6 electoral votes. And when we had, it's not shown here because it was so long ago, but when those New York Times polls were released in partnership with Siena College, Nevada was the big shocker because it showed Trump winning by something like 12 or 13%. And Nevada, if you don't know, was a Democratic state in 2020. Biden won this state in 2020 by 2.5%. And then it showed Trump winning by 12%. That is almost a 15-point swing to the right, which is absolutely absurd. Now, I don't think, obviously, Nevada will go to Trump by 12%. But it just gives you an idea of the change in mood of these elections from 2020 to 2024. But looking at these polls, we have 7 and 5, 2, and 3 are really the only ones that aren't a likely characterization. Even though this was a Democratic state, this was a Biden state in 2020, polls are predicting that it goes to Trump by over 5%. Absolutely astonishing. And then we head over to New Hampshire, where Biden leads by, that's against DeSantis, sorry. Against Trump, Biden leads by 3, 7, 7, 10, 8. So clearly, 8 is against DeSantis. But clearly, why was Bernie Sanders put against Trump? I do not know. But overall, it does appear that even though I think that New Hampshire will actually be closer than this, it actually does appear that Democrats do have sort of a lock on New Hampshire heading into 2024 and that they will win it by a likely margin. Now moving on to New Jersey. No polls, I guess, conducted there this year. I guess we could expect that one to be safe Democrat if there have been no polls conducted. I personally think it's going to be likely. New Mexico, so we do have some New Mexico polls. Biden up by 8, Biden up by 11, up by 10, up by 7. Not bad for Biden in the state of New Mexico. I would think that this would actually narrow up since, they seem like a very economically driven state when it comes to voting. But they do appear that they will stay likely for Biden. And then New York, with their 28 electoral votes, Biden leads by 10. And I mean, these polls are very interesting. Siena College has conducted all of these polls, and all of them show Biden, except in September of last year, which is so long ago. All of them have Biden winning by a likely margin, in many cases less than double digits. In the state of New York, a state where in 2018, Chuck Schumer, the Democratic senator, won 70% of the vote. 70%. Or I believe, that was 2016. Sorry, even with Hillary Clinton on the ballot. So this state has become so much, I won't even say more Republican, just so much less Democratic in these recent years. There has been great disapproval for Democrats in the state of New York recently, and that trend we saw in 2022 is very apparent, but it continues into 2024. According to these polls, they have it going to Biden by a likely margin. Now, looking at North Carolina, Trump won this by less than a percentage point in 2020. It was his closest state that he won. And Trump leads by every single poll. Again, his highest being by 14%. But all of these polls do have, except from Emerson from February, have it a likely margin win. The vast majority do have it a likely state. That is also where I have it right now. I believe I might have, I did do likely for North Carolina. And North Carolina polls are actually usually always accurate for whatever reason. They were very accurate in 2022. North Dakota, wow, I'm surprised there was even a single poll conducted. Trump up by 37%. That's just funny. Ohio. Now, this used to be very much a swing state, a very purple state, a very important state that each presidential candidate wanted to have under their column. But now, not so much. Donald Trump was, for whatever reason, extremely popular in this state, and he made he made Ohio really so much more partisan towards Republicans. He won it by 9 in 2016, and while the rest of the country shifted enormously to the left towards the Democrats, Ohio went to him by 8. It shifted a point to the left, with Trump winning by 8%. So looking at 2024, he only increases his margin, the vast majority of polls showing a race in the likely margin column, which is also where I have it. And then moving on to the state of Oklahoma, Donald Trump leads by a safe margin in all but a single poll. In the state of Oregon, Biden leads by 15 and by 10, so that is a likely state. That is where I have it in my prediction also. I think that Oregon will surprise a lot of people in future years. I think that it is on the trajectory to shift heavily to the Republican Party, and we could see this as a potential swing state in a few years from now. In 2022, the gubernatorial election was hotly contested. In Pennsylvania, one of the most critical swing states in presidential elections, Biden only leads a single poll with Trump a single poll. Trump leads by 4, by 4, by 2, Biden plus 1. Trump leads by 6, plus 9. So you get the idea. So we know that this will be a very close state, right? I mean, that is for certain. We need to look out for Pennsylvania. They have a lot of electoral votes, and really, whoever wins Pennsylvania, it might just be whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the presidency. But regardless, looking at polls, 4-4-2. So the majority, it looks like, yeah, with 5 and 2, it looks like the majority do have Pennsylvania going to Donald Trump by a lean margin. And that is a flip from 2020. And then we have the state of Rhode Island. Biden leads by 17, 11, and then 14. So on average, wow, I mean, that's incredible. On average, Rhode Island actually becomes a likely state. That is unusual. And then South Carolina, not a state that we really look at too much in general elections. It's always just below that safe margin percent threshold, except for this election. Polls are indicating that it will be slightly above the safe margin threshold to make it a safe state for Donald Trump. In South Dakota, Donald Trump leads by a lot. In Texas, Trump leads by 9, by 8, by 4, by 4, by 7, by 9, by 7. So on average, they do put him about, a little bit above 5% to make it a likely state. I personally think that polls are pretty accurate on that. I think that it does trend a little bit towards the Republicans in 2024, considering the very apparent shift we've seen among Latino voters going from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. I mean, that has been very apparent in the past elections, and I do think that it will, indicate or cause a bigger Trump win here than he won in 2020. He won by 5.5% back in 2020. In Utah, this is actually by all indicators of polling, this is actually a state that we might actually have to look out for a little bit. 4 polls have been conducted. All show it in the likely margin characterization. That is a major shift to the left from 2020. And finally, good sign for Biden. But, of course, it's in a state that he doesn't even have any chance of winning. In Vermont, I'm surprised there have been any polls even conducted in Vermont. That is a safe Democratic state. In Virginia, Biden does lead against Trump here. I mean, here you see Haley leading against Biden while Trump loses to Biden, which makes sense. These are voters that have really turned their backs to Trump during his presidency. It was close when Donald Trump was simply the Republican nominee for president, when he was a little less unhinged, when he was a little bit more normal, like in 2016. But since his presidency, or since he was elected, really, they have completely shunned. These more educated, upper-class voters have completely turned their backs on Trump. And that's why you see someone like Nikki Haley lead, a more moderate, more centrist, more traditional conservative Republican, while Donald Trump loses. So according to polls, let's see, Biden leads by 3 here, but most, 6, 6, 5, 5, most do have Virginia as a likely state. That is also where I have it in my current prediction. In Washington, Biden leads by 16, 14, 12, 12, 11. So it looks like on average it actually does fall below the 15% threshold to be a safe state, which is very surprising. Washington is a very safe Democratic state, but according to polls, it will fall under the likely characterization. Then in West Virginia, the single poll that was conducted have it going to Trump by a safe margin. Not much of a surprise there. And then in Wisconsin, a state where both Trump and Biden won it by less than 1% in their respective elections, Donald Trump leads by every single poll, leads in every single poll between him and Joe Biden. By 9, by 3, by 4, by 3, by 2, by 4. So, looking at these polls, there are a handful of critical swing states that we have to watch out for every election that are all flipping to Trump. And when you look, even if you don't trust polls, it is extremely hard to have a positive outlook if you're a Democrat, if you're a Biden supporter, looking at this upcoming re-election uphill battle. it is very hard, looking at polling, to have any sort of positive feeling about this election. I mean, it will be very difficult for Biden to come back from this. But on average, it does look like Trump wins by a lean margin. Yet another flip for him. And finally, Wyoming, the single poll that was conducted, has Trump winning by 53%. Now, how did I skip the state of Tennessee? Okay, I guess I just skipped it. But Donald Trump does win by a safe margin. So, according to polls strictly, the states of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Maine all flip from Democrat in 2020 to Republican in 2024. They all flip. Those are the first 6 that I said. Those are known as the 6 swing states in American politics. We really, far away from the election, we really don't know how they're going to go. And these states decide elections. Every other state, we know how they're going to go. That is why, polls are similar to the results of 2020 and with my current prediction also. But these 6 states do decide elections: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And Donald Trump, according to polls, leads in all of them. And not by some narrow tilt margins. No, he leads by likely margins, according to polls, in Nevada, in Arizona, in Georgia. And by healthy lean margins in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So even if Biden was still able to somehow clinch a couple of these states, let's say he wins Michigan, and then maybe he hangs on to Arizona, it's still a Trump win. I mean, Biden would have to win the entire blue wall, I believe. Yeah. No, even if he wins, oh my god, even if he wins because of Maine, even if he wins the entire blue wall, Donald Trump still wins the election. So, polling is not a perfect indicator of how an election is going, but it does give you an idea of changes that we are seeing from previous elections. And by all means, it is showing that Joe Biden is in for a very tough re-election fight. So thank you all for watching this video. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Go check out my other videos, and I will see you all next time.